Welcome to season 2 of Your Tru Awakening podcast. I am Sandra Tru. For over a decade, I've guided visionary leaders, founders, and creatives through the inner work of transformation, helping them reconnect with their truth, creativity, and aliveness. And this season is about one thing, moving from awareness into embodiment. Because insight isn't the problem. Most people already know what's true. They're just not living it. So each week, we go deeper into the patterns, the nervous system, the truth beneath the surface, and what it actually takes to create a life that feels like you. And I'm super excited today because my guest, Dr. Jasmine Escalera, is a spiritual neuroscientist, speaker, and founder dedicated to helping people understand and heal the patterns they've inherited across generations. Her work bridges neuroscience, epigenetics, spirituality, and ancestral healing, exploring how the beliefs, behaviors, and survival strategies passed down through our families continue to shape our lives today. Through her research and teachings, she helps people move beyond inherited conditioning and reconnect with their own truth, voice, and power. I'm excited to explore what it really means to heal not only ourselves, but the generations that came before us and those that will come after us, because it really makes a difference how we show up in the world through who we are being. Dr. Jasmine, I'm so excited to have you.
Super excited to be here. And thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I'm thrilled to talk to someone like you about this particular topic because I feel like you definitely embody healing in so many different ways. So excited to be here to speak to your guests.
Yay, amazing. This conversation is deeply personal for me because it's been a journey I've been on, and it's a journey that is kind of new for a lot of people and is highly important. And I'm very curious about before, like, what led you to this? What is the first moment that you're like, ooh, generational healing is a must, right? Was there a moment in your own life when you realized that carrying something that perhaps didn't originate with you was becoming too much of a weight to bear?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it was more of an unfolding than one specific moment, I would say, that I realized something that I'm carrying is stopping me from the life that I want, and it didn't start with me.
Mhm.
And I would say that the major sort of through line for all of the different stories that connect to why I started the Institute for Generational Healing, the major through line is love. I
Mhm.
was divorced with relationships that never worked out. And I had to take a step back and really ask myself, okay, what am I contributing to one of the things that I want the most, which is being in a healthy, loving relationship, not
Mhm.
working out for me? And when I took that step back and really started to identify what are the reasons that I'm not getting to that objective or that goal that I wanted, a lot of it had to do with my definition of what love meant. And my
Mm.
definition of love wasn't about healthy love, it was about familiar love. And when I took that step back and asked myself, what does familiar look like? I started to realize that familiar was something that was passed down. It was
Mm.
basically love that I learned, not love that I necessarily desired or wanted. But
Mhm.
it was also love from my family and love for my community as well. I have a deep sense of love to my family and my community, but I happen to see and live in a community where a lot of survival patterns played out on the day to day basis, including my own family members ending up in prison simply because they were trying to make a dollar and survive. And
Mhm.
many of these individuals were men who I saw them grow up. And so I knew that they had experienced some really traumatic things in their lives, but no one had ever stopped to ask them, what are you carrying? What are you holding? What do you need to
Mhm.
let go of? And how can I help you let go of that? And so they engaged in behaviors that were the only behaviors that they knew how to what to do to basically survive. And so everything stems from this idea of love. I want love. I want healthy love. I want to love others in the best way possible in terms of helping them and guiding them, but realizing also that many people in my family that I do love, unfortunately, I'll never be able to help. So,
Mhm.
how do I really help the people that I can, or the people that are called to, the people that want to understand that much of what you're holding didn't start with you. And if we start to recognize that if it didn't start with me, can it be a little bit easier to put those things down and
Mhm.
really then define what these things you're looking for mean to you, how you want to experience them, and also how you want your life to be different in the circumstances that you're in today. The whole goal of the institute is to uncover those rules that we inherited essentially, that we no longer want to live by, and to help us consciously choose what are the rules we do want to live by and what are the things that we want to pass down to the next generation.
I mean, it's so good. I'm just getting emotional here thinking about so much of the work that I've done has been through the feminine lineage. And you just sharing that story about the male in your family got me super teary-eyed because even the patterns that I have seen that have been really challenging for my family in my lineage, I can see them in the man in my family. You know, it's
Mhm.
very different wounding and still very painful to watch and very painful because there's so much to do that you can do in order to release that, in order to just teach your wiring of your nervous system something completely new. And yet, that this work is not for the person that is not desiring to do it, willing to do it. And so sometimes, like, the respect for somebody's journey is so necessary when you're deep in the work, which is like, whew,
Yeah.
okay, I can. There's no, there, you don't need any fixing. And if you need something and if you're interested, I'm available. So yeah, just feeling
That
deeply into that.
I think that's one of the hardest parts I
Mhm.
think of healing. When I was going through my journey and really trying to understand the patterns, the cycles that my family was propagating or that passed down, it helped me to then just give it a little bit more perspective. Not
Mhm.
everybody is called to heal at the time that you are.
Mhm.
Potentially, not everybody is called to heal in this lifetime, but we
Mhm.
have to allow people to walk their journey and path. I think
Yeah.
the most important part that I tell everyone is focusing on your own healing does have an immense ripple effect. I
Mhm.
didn't know that by focusing on my healing, not only would I heal my relationship with my parents, and actually become, instead of a parent to my parents, a
Mhm.
child to my parents.
Yeah,
I
been
didn't
there.
realize that through that healing, I would gain that perspective and that ability, but, it also helped them to open up to healing,
Mhm.
and when I founded the institute, they made a deep commitment to help me in any way possible to make this organization happen,
Wow.
and one of the things that they have been doing that has been instrumental in helping me, which is helping the organization, is opening up about the trauma that they've experienced in their lives to me directly. And that has been one of the most amazing experiences.
Mm.
And it would never have happened unless I truly decided that I was going to focus on my healing. I was going to
Mhm.
put my healing first and just really believe in my heart that whoever was going to come on this journey with me would eventually start the journey with me.
Yeah.
So my parents may never have the experience of gaining the full perspective that I have, but they also didn't have the tools that I had when I have them. So we
Mhm.
also kind of have to give that perspective in our generational
Mhm.
healing journey, that as we hear the stories of the people before us, of our family members, as we get more into where we came from and why we act a certain way, that we also need to sort of give that grace to the generations before us, that we live in a different time where healing is much more at the forefront of the
Mhm.
conversation. And those before us just simply didn't have the tools, the resources, the language, the perspective to do the deep level of work that we have the ability to do
Mhm.
today.
The space.
Yeah.
Just simply to have the option to say, I have a little bit of space. I mean, you think about our most of our grandparents were doing, you know, 5 plus children, 7, 13. Like, and when you think about that, that many mouths to feed, that many people needing your attention, like that many people to show up for in life, like it was full on. And I feel like as we have allowed ourselves to develop more than just in birthing and and breeding children, that has given us more space. And so I was having this conversation with my little cousin the other day of like the responsibility of knowing that we have this capacity to create space to know ourselves that our parents didn't have, that our grandparents didn't have, and what happens when we start to model for them instead of to preach to them.
Yeah.
More that like attracts like, and if they're in our environment, we're gonna bring out naturally inspire, ignite the qualities that are very like lived in our body, in our experiences, because that's the difference between living intentionally and living randomly, right? Like when
Mhm.
someone walks into a place with intention, that person entrains the field. When someone walks randomly without intention, that person will get entrained to the field. And so our own healing has such a benefit, not just for our family and our lineage, but really for every space we walk into, because it's a completely, it becomes us. We start to use the body, the physical form, as a transmutation device that is no longer
Yeah.
resisting these emotions. That I feel like one of the reasons why there has been so much pattern into scarcity and into survival and in shame is because their bodies before us that we're getting information from were resisting and fighting against feeling these things. And it's that resistance that makes the pattern continue. It's like the protection
Absolutely,
again.
yeah. Yeah, and I also, I think that, one of the things that I do not in any way, shape, or form take for granted is the fact that I have a life where I am 43 years old. I
Mhm.
am single. I do not have children. And so that affords me certain abilities and certain time and certain capacity to do certain things. But when we think about generational healing, generational trauma, cycles propagating, we have to be very conscientious of certain communities still
Mhm.
live within those cycles simply because of the structure and the system that's built around them. And so many
Got it.
individuals, even though they have the tool, even though the world has the tools and the language, and more of this is coming to the forefront, there are still many communities and many people who don't have the privilege of time and
Mhm.
space and capacity to really give to their healing journey, and that's just simply, like, not a falsity, that's
Mhm.
not an out, but it's a truth and it's a reality, and so one of the things that I really want to the institute to focus on is those communities for which it is difficult to get out of scarcity mindset simply because you live in it every single day. We cannot take out the fact that
Mhm.
there are communities that live in poverty, that live in
Mhm.
financial instability, that live in food insecurity, with single moms that have to work
Mhm.
consistently and constantly. So we don't want to dismiss the reality of people's experiences, but how can we bring healing into these communities in a way that is distilled to them in a way that they can hear it? Is one thing, that it becomes accessible and that it really becomes something that gets integrated into the life that they have to pull them out of the circumstances that they're in, and not be something that we say you need an immense amount of time and space and
Mhm.
capacity for. Because for me, I feel like I am privileged to have those things. And that was a conscious choice because I wanted to be able to focus on my healing. But not
Mhm.
everybody is going to be able to have that conscious choice. And,
Mhm.
just getting to the person and to the circumstances and the situation that they're in, and making sure that healing really truly becomes accessible to our communities.
Mhm. That's so beautiful because from traveling so much, there are so many communities, but this is at home too. This is in our own countries, right? Not just America,
Yeah.
but like other countries that there are so many communities that really that you can feel a sense of like we've abandoned them. Like
It can
everything is,
feel like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
like.
can feel like that.
Mhm. And so what have you found? Like what's working? What works when you go into these communities that really touches people and in a practical way, in an informational way? What are the invitations that are really landing for people?
I think the biggest thing to do when you talk to communities about healing or about any kind of, generational healing, whatever it is really truly to listen. The number
Mhm.
one thing that the organization and the institute right now is doing is listening. And I think that's very important because we don't want to assume we know that people understand what generational healing is. We don't want to assume we know what people need. So the most important thing is, how do we get into communities and start discussions and conversations where we can actually listen to what people are going through, what they're struggling with when it comes to generational cycles, when it comes to
Mhm.
living in scarcity patterns, so that
Yeah.
we get the opportunity to truly know what are the things that people are dealing with when they think about this idea and concept of inherited trauma, intergenerational trauma, generational healing. That's the most important thing for us. So, a big project that the Institute has started to embark on currently is something called we're calling the Lineage Healer Archives. So, we are going out into communities and we are asking individuals who are cycle breakers, who are doing this work, and who choose to want to do this work, and also are starting to investigate this kind of work. What are some of the cycles you feel you need to break in order for you and those who come after you to have the life you truly want and desire? What are some of the struggles you see within your own communities? But also, what's equally important to the Institute is that we don't just conversate about trauma, we lead the conversation around resilience. So, the
Mhm.
other thing we're really focusing on is the other side to generational healing, which is not just the trauma that we pass down, or the survival that we pass down, or the scarcity that we pass down, but also the courage, the strength, the resilience that we pass down in our communities that can
Mhm.
be used as components to heal the trauma. So we're really going out into the community and talking to individuals about their cycles, how they broke them, what are some of the tools that they're using, but also what they're passing down from their family and their lineage that is the things that they want to preserve culturally, the cycles that
Mhm.
they want to preserve, the things that they want to preserve. That's our biggest project right now, and it's very much designed and developed to listen, because
Mhm.
I think very often when we talk about healing, and especially when we are healers or we are healing or we have healed certain components of ourselves, we assume that other people understand the language, or we assume that we can speak to them in a way that they're going to get it. But I think that that's sometimes where we can miss the mark, because individuals who are starting their healing journey or asking questions about healing may not have the same language that we do. And so it's very important that we understand, what are people trying to do? What cycles are people trying to break?
Mhm.
What are they trying to learn? And we meet them where they are.
Isn't that beautiful that it's the same, again, love, right? Which is, you were talking about love and the quality that you can only find inside of love, which is really like a realm of field, is connection. And unless you can listen to somebody, witness, right? There's no connection, there's no presence, there's no love. And so, yeah, the power of being witnessed is one of the most healing mechanisms, and it's also in any container that it's actually supporting you in any growth. There needs to be space for being heard and being
Mhm,
witnessed, which I think is the ultimate way to transform anything,
mhm.
because a lot of people have never even given language to these questions. And they've
Yeah,
never even had the question. And the power of the question is that it allows your consciousness to start to look and create a brand new pattern. Studying the brain and neural connections is like, the power of a question is that it allows you to focus on something different than the habitual focus. And so,
mhm.
with that, I can see how beautiful and how heard these communities are feeling. I mean, not these communities, all of us, right? All of us just get a
Yeah,
little bit of space to be heard, to share ourselves, and naturally the healing starts to happen. Something that I did in order to get closer to my lineage and to my ancestry. I walk a shamanic path, and so much of the work that we do is working with our ancestors. And I am an immigrant child, right? I like moved to America when I was 8. So I didn't have much of a connection with my lineage, and something that allowed me to build a relationship with my father, who I grew up far from, and with like my grandparents, was just doing the research, as again to what you were saying, right? Just asking them,
mhm,
and like the power of having them reconnect to their fathers, to their mothers, right? To
mhm.
tell me their stories. To together, we're starting to look at the patterns, right? Just simply out of
Yeah,
interviewing and having them share their points of view of these people that came before them, and to give them names, the power of
yeah,
sharing their name and their story, and to know that they had challenges, but they also have amazing gifts that we want to harness. And so the way that I work with my ancestors and with my lineages is like, I'm like, they're helpers, these are
yeah,
my helpers, and you can activate that courage and that resilience because they had really challenging lives. Like this, when I hear the stories of my grandmothers, I'm like, wow, right?
Yeah,
There's also like the feeling that you have that much strength inside of you because you come
100%,
from
yeah.
these resilient people that we're probably never going to see again the challenges that our ancestors have gone through in the, moving forward. Like they really went through challenges. So I love that. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
yeah. Yeah, and I think every generation has its own challenges, and,
Mhm.
I think we're going through a technological challenge
Oh,
shift,
yeah.
technology. So I think there's always struggles and there's always challenges, there's perspective on how we see it, but I think the thing that has been really powerful in terms of story and listening and this conversation, the thing that's been really powerful for me is it provides you a glimpse into someone's life so
Mhm.
that you can understand what they've gone through and you can understand how they act and how they engage and how they are and how they behave. And I think
Mhm.
that is really important because when someone gets an opportunity to sit down with you, or when you take a moment to really understand someone's story and perspective, and then you connect the dots as to, I get it. Now that's why you act like this or behave like this or think like this, it really helps you to put into perspective that's that person's behavior, or that's that person's story, or that's that person's way of living. But
Mhm.
because I didn't go through it, or I didn't go through the same situations, or I didn't go through those circumstances, I no longer have to attach to that belief, behavior, or way of being. So it's a very interesting way to be able
Mhm.
to almost kind of unlock ourselves from family stories,
Yeah.
because what it helps us to do is to say, you went through that and I can have compassion for what you
Mhm.
went through, and now I can understand why you do what you do. But
Mhm.
because I did not go through that same struggle or that same challenge, or I didn't wasn't in that same circumstance, I actually don't have to take on those beliefs and those behaviors and those ways of being. I can stop the cycle now and decide, because of where I am, what I have accomplished, what I have done, I get to create a new story.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really powerful part of generational healing, is the ability to disassociate yourself from someone else's tragedy, from someone
Mhm.
else's story, from what someone else went through, and really be able to say, I can take myself out of that situation now. And what ends up happening is that when we grow up, we essentially are surrounded by individuals, and that's where we obtain our beliefs. That's where we
Mhm.
obtain our mindsets. That's where we obtain our behaviors. We absorb it from those around us. And those around us went through certain struggles and situations. So we're just absorbing all of that information. But it
Mhm.
can be very helpful to say, as an adult today, I don't have those same situations, so I can stop the cycle. So I think storytelling is just so pivotal, and taking the time to
So
understand
powerful.
people's journeys, because it gives you the opportunity to have compassion, but it also gives you the opportunity to start to disassociate from the story.
Yeah, and like when in my work, I do a lot of parts work. And one of the
Mhm.
easiest way to disidentify, meaning to lose a grip that is running your identity, is to first overly identify, right? And so one of the ways that we can do that is to really dive into somebody else's story, because it's like looking at a bird outside the window, right? When you can say like,
Mhm.
that's a bird right there and it's not me because I can point to it, right? Then I
Yeah.
know that it's separate from me. And so yeah, it makes me
Mhm.
think about the work that I did as an actor. And I bring this work into my coaching, which is, there was this book that I read. It's called "It Didn't Start with Me" by Mark Woolen. Have you
Oh,
ever?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah,
powerful.
it's sitting back here somewhere.
It's so powerful. I mean, I give that book to so many people. When I was in theater, we would tell the stories and we would rehearse and rehearse and then like completely embody people that we didn't even know, and
Mm.
father figures. And like when I'm working with somebody, sometimes I'll get them to fully embody and get in the shape and get in the physicality of that person that they might be judging, usually a parent, and to tell me their story as them. So I start interviewing their mother as them, and what starts to happen when they can create that greater level of compassion because they're literally in their shoes. I mean, it was transformational work for me. That's why I bring it into my work so much. But it's doing like parts work through the somatic consciousness of somebody else, and the rewiring that can happen when someone's like, oh my God, like, I never saw that. I never knew that. And I also support people in using their imagination to tell me the things that they don't have information about. And it's so powerful because when we open ourselves in curiosity and we are essentially allowing this gnosis to start to pour through us, we can tap into information that it's not logical, right? It's just like we start in a way like channeling information that can inform our choices today. So I really love what you're sharing there. Like it's almost like a way, the possibility of studying and listening to the inherited patterns that we might think we have no, like, this is just how I am. It's like this is
Yeah,
just
yeah.
how I am. Like I am this way, when in reality you you might just be naturally moving toward what seems natural and what you've normalized because that has been your conditioning, but there could be so much more to you, right? Or you go then do it completely the opposite in a way to rebel against what you
Yeah.
saw, which still keeps you bounded to a specific versus opening yourself to your creatorhood, right? And so
Yeah.
like being able to see the pattern, and again the work is just more agency. What happens when we have more agency and more choice, right? And I'm sure like that's at the root of building resilience, right? Which is probably what the institute is getting at.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that I latched onto that when you were talking is, and I think that this is important to kind of note, because so this is about awareness. It's
Mhm.
about understanding and aware and becoming aware of the stories, the behaviors, the patterns, the cycles that have been passed down in your family, and almost kind of like the why behind it.
Mhm.
The rewiring is really what happens after that. So, we can become aware of what's been passed down in our cycles, and we can be brought to that level of awareness. But after the awareness, then comes the feelings of compassion and
Mhm.
empathy and understanding. And those feelings, and allowing for your body to feel those feelings, then allows for you to consciously choose different moving forward. And that
Mhm.
consciously choosing different moving forward is where the rewiring really starts to begin.
Mhm.
Because we need to understand that the work isn't the awareness. The work is what comes after the
Mhm.
awareness.
Mhm.
It is every day choosing when a thought or behavior comes to the surface that you now know is one of
Mhm.
your patterns. It's in action, live in action in the moment, or even
Mhm.
after reflection, after
Mhm.
understanding, choosing to do something differently. And so
Mhm.
what's very important with the organization, with the institute, is understanding what you inherited, bringing it to your conscious, so conscious inheritance, bringing it to your conscious, and then choosing differently moving forward, because that's really where that rewiring uh, is going to happen. It's going to happen in that level of work. And it's
Mhm.
not easy. And I think that people need to understand that just because you know what your cycle and pattern is does not mean you're going to change. It just
Mhm.
means that you're going to become aware of it. But what you do after that is important. And that's the hard part, because sometimes you'll slip, sometimes you'll do the same thing, sometimes you won't catch yourself. But that's where grace, compassion, love of self gets
Mhm.
built in that moment, because then you start to say, okay, I may not have done it the way I wouldn't want to now as the version of myself who's aware, but I'm going to give myself grace and compassion and love and empathy, and say I'm going to try differently next time. So
Mhm.
this is a process, and I think that's, the part that I want people to really understand, not because I'm saying it's hard, but because I'm saying that that's the work.
And I just love everything that you're saying right now because so many people get stuck in awareness. It's like I can tell you all about my traumas and I can tell you, and at the end of the day, it's like, but who cares? Who
Yeah, but
cares?
what are you doing about it?
Yeah,
What are you
because we all
changing?
do.
I've seen some people say, "Well, I'm just like that," and I'm
Yeah, it's
like,
like,
"Well, that's, if you
yeah.
know that your trauma is that, or you know that you're acting within your trauma,
Yeah.
maybe we should try something a little bit different."
Yes, because it's like at the whole purpose of my work is essentially to get people from victimhood to freedom, which I think is what our culture, humanity is going through that transition of like, if we have the excuse of this is my trauma, here's my trauma card, this is why that happened to me. And then it's just like, but who do we become? So there's like that middle ground, which is the cultivation of these energies that essentially shape your inner environment, compassion, presence, right? Like creating space to
Yeah.
feel, having the capacity to understand your body as a transmutation device, that the feeling of the things is not going to kill you, and then cultivating what it is that you are wanting to express in the world. And then when we
Mhm.
do that, we'll start to change our internal environment, which I'm really excited to speak to you about, because that's essentially what changes even the expression of our proteins, right? Even the how our body shapes what are thoughts, epigenetics, right? Can you give people an idea of what epigenetics are?
From the standpoint of inherited trauma, essentially what happens is if someone experiences a traumatic event, then that can actually change gene expression. So it can change the way your genes get expressed. Now, what exactly does that mean? It means that essentially the way you respond to stress may potentially change. So things that would normally not trigger you because you've essentially experienced something. It changed your gene expression, it changed the way you experience stress, and so your stress response changes. Now, the thing is that if it changes gene expression, then that can actually be passed down. It's not the event that gets passed down, it's essentially the genes, the DNA, what you inherit is that. So we really want to consciously think about that. And then it's not the traumatic response, it's really the body response, essentially, the
Mhm. The
stress response
impulses.
that might get passed down. Exactly, the impulses.
Mhm.
So when we think about this in terms of generational healing, we have to be really conscientious of the fact that we're not just talking about we're not just talking about beliefs. We're not just talking about mindset. We're not just talking about what happens in the mind. We're also talking about body visceral
Mhm.
responses. And that's incredibly important
Mhm.
because when we think about survival responses, we're talking about stress responses. We're talking about how your body actually interprets particular situations that you're in and the response that your body is going to have to that. And
Mhm.
so, very often, our mind as fast as the body. And so, the body will experience essentially whatever is going on much quicker than your mind will. So, that's why
Mhm.
we very much want people to be integrated into their body responses. How are you feeling in certain situations? How is your body experiencing it? And that
Mhm.
can actually be a really good indicator or way of being able to say, okay, this is how I engage with stress. This is how I engage with whatever is going on in the world around me. And so potentially what could that mean in terms of, that inherited component to it?
Mhm. Yeah, what's so powerful about what you're saying is that yes, all of that is inherited, and also we can look at our body as an expression of our unconscious. And so if our
Yeah.
body is an expression of our unconscious, well, we are not victims of our unconscious. I'd like to invite people to consider that our unconscious is also a garden, that we can plant the seeds for whatever we want to see grow. And so if
Mhm.
we're consciously influencing ourselves through putting ourselves in the right environments, paying super close attention to the feelings in our body that feel less than enjoyable, as a way to track what's in alignment for me, what's out of alignment with me, what feels life-giving, what feels like is leaking my life. Then it's like sometimes catching the thought of like what it is that I'm thinking, what it is that I'm feeling is too hard. And the
Mhm.
body is your like you can read it through your body. So much of where we get stuck through this process is trying to get more information, when in reality is like you have direct experience. So get to the body, get to the experience, because you can also teach your body to relax. you can also,
Yes.
through expanding on the qualities of compassion and love and self-care and self-worth and doing things that make you feel the way that you want to feel, just because you're training yourself to deserve more, to be in a healthier state, that also influences the environment of the gene expression that you are developing. Right? Wouldn't you say that's true?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we want to really be conscientious of is self-regulation. We wanna be able to regulate ourselves. So, again, you're never gonna be in a perfect state, you're never gonna be around perfect people, and in fact, you may end up in an environment, or you may be in an environment now where there's a lot of stress around you or a lot of instability. And so the question isn't how do you get yourself isn't always the first question isn't always how do you completely disassociate from the environment that you're in, if that's not a possibility for you, but it's how do you learn to regulate yourself, your emotions, your stress response, what you are going through in this moment, so that you can oftentimes down regulate the experience that you're having to a normal state, which then helps you consciously think in a better way, in a better perspective. So it's really about how do I regulate the response that I have to my environment, to
Mhm.
stress, to what's happening around me, so that then I can get myself to some kind of balance, which then
Okay.
allows me to consciously think better. So
Mhm.
the thing that we want to understand is like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mhm.
like the bottom tier is just basic
It's
life
survival.
necessities. But a lot of people don't even have that. And so we want to be conscientious of when we have this conversation around healing and around, all of these different things, that what about the people, the vast majority of people who are still living in that bottom? So we can't get to self actualization until we really have homeostasis. And
Mhm.
so that's what we're really seeking is how do you learn how to regulate your body, your system, whatever your normal typical response is, in a way that you get to that homeostasis, you get to that balance. So then you have the ability to go into the conscious more and say, okay, how do I manage this situation better? How do
Mhm.
I think about this situation in a more clearer perspective? How can I look at this from a different angle that best serves me? Because if you're so triggered in your body, you're never going to get to that. So I think the
Mhm.
first step is really what are the practices, what are the things that help you down regulate, get to homeostasis so that you can even consciously think about the situation you're in a better perspective.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, it's so powerful. And and again, moving towards freedom, right? Regulating ourselves as the first necessary step to be able to explore the unconscious so that we can develop thanks to the unconscious that we become aware of, right?
Yeah.
Like the first necessary step to consciousness is lack of consciousness. So
Yeah.
not to judge it, but to be so grateful that we regulate enough that we can see the pattern, from seeing the pattern, take the necessary action. And that action is a challenge. Hopefully, it's a challenge because you're choosing something new. And,
Yeah.
I see you at the gym and we work out hard, and so sometimes you could look at a challenge when you're not choosing it as, "Ugh," but there's also a delight to it. Like, I love getting
Mhm.
stronger, right? I love
Mhm.
lifting heavy. It becomes pleasure if you can know that you are the one choosing the challenge, because life will give you challenges. But if you're creating the ground where you can really rest to be able to
Mhm.
choose the next challenge, right? This is the choice of what's normalized. It's already giving me a pain, right? Like that unconscious
Mhm.
pattern is giving me already a pain. So I might as well choose something else that might give me a different kind of pain, but it's a pain that's making me like, oh, like weight train, like making me feel stronger and more in
Absolutely.
like in delight and more in my strength. And so that is the choice point. Like when I work with people, it's like you have the choice point here, right? It's like that
Yeah.
pattern, you now see it, you keep doing the same thing. Like you're gonna repeat the same thing. But like that's also the greatest possibility of like, "Ooh, let me lift, let
Yeah,
me
yeah,
use
yeah.
this as like my pump." And like that's a chosen challenge. And the power about knowing that we have that capacity, like not some people, not the doctors or the coaches or the healers. No, that is a human trait that all that it
Yeah.
requires is for us to become responsible enough of regulating, of getting to that level of homeostasis, not to stay there forever, but to figure out what are the good stresses that I want in my life. What's the you stress, right? Like what's actually going to make me strong, more agile, more resilient in my life at will, by choice. And like that's when we start seeing so much of people leave and perhaps create new decisions that are moving them away from common inherited patterns. I know that when I'm working with people, I see some of the common patterns I see is like that people pleasing and the overachieving. Oh my
Mhm.
God, perfectionism,
Yeah.
scarcity. We were talking about pattern struggles, right? And also for a lot of people, the fear of being seen, the fear of being rejected, abandoned, right? So it's like how often do people mistake these patterns that they perhaps inherited as their own personality traits, in your view?
Oh, I think yeah, I think until you bring it to the awareness, you think it all is your personality. You think it all is just who you are. You have to bring it to the awareness before you can start to ask the deeper questions like, where did I learn this? Where did this come from? So I think until you come to that awareness, I believe that everyone thinks it's just who I am, and this is just how we are, even like the
Mhm,
collective, wherever you came from, your family, your culture, your community. It's not even just this is how I am. This sometimes is just how this is just how we are. I think that's pretty much it. If you
mhm,
don't if you don't sit down and question it. And I think I think that the reason one of the reasons why this work has always been drawn to me is because I'm a researcher at heart. So, everything that I do is based around data and questions and questioning.
mhm,
And so when I really turned that on, not to the external, but to myself, that was when I started to see that, yeah, a lot of what I considered my personality or just who I am was passed down. And you mentioned patterns. And earlier this year, before we even started the organization, I was really curious to know, especially again around relationships. And this isn't even just love relationships,
mhm.
just
In
relationships in
general.
general, relationships in life, relationships in love, relationships in career, relationships with family. What do people feel are the biggest sort of patterns or barriers that they're experiencing that are holding them back from having healthy relationships in different aspects of their lives? And so I created this relationship pattern survey,
Mhm,
and over 1,000 people have taken it. It was mainly geared towards women. And we were able to see that over 70% of the women who took this survey were actually women of color, identified as women of
mhm,
color. And the number one pattern that showcased in these women was hyperindependence.
mhm,
So the need to be the strong one,
mhm,
which makes a lot of sense in, the black and brown culture, in women of color and people who come from certain communities.
mhm,
It's this idea and this concept of I always have to hold it down. I always have to
mhm,
be the one that's taking care of everything, the strong one, never showing vulnerability.
mhm.
And that is 110% an inherited pattern in culture, in our cultures and in our communities, because all we've seen are women who always step in, who always keep it together, who always hold it down, who are always getting the thing done. But what we need to realize is that every pattern that has a positive to it, we've created very independent, strong women, and we should never take that away from us. It also has the counterbalance, which is the inability to be held, the inability to be soft, the inability to let someone
Yeah.
take over when you just simply can't or do not want
Mhm,
to, but you're the one always stepping in. So there's so many of these inherited patterns that when we really call them to light, we can see that they're not our personality, they are passed down. And we can also see the duality around them, that
mhm,
there is a protective mechanism, there is something there. But there is also that counterbalance that we've been taught, especially when it comes for the hyper independence, that it's not safe for us to let anybody else step in. And it's likely because we've constantly seen in our family and in our community that no one is going to be there to save you. Like, how many
Mhm,
times have you heard that one? And so we
mhm.
develop this sense of self, but we have to kind of question where that sense of self came from.
So, were you just, like, looking up my lineage or something?
It's just such a familiar story, like, it
Yeah.
really is. It's such a familiar story in the Latino culture, in the Black culture. It's just a very familiar archetype.
Yeah, I mean, so much of the work that I've been doing with my lineage has been that, like, really exploring
Mhm.
what these women, these very strong women that it come from, matriarchs, w- where is the distortion? Because so much of who they
Mhm.
are I admire, and so much of what I see is not what I want for my life. And so I went on like this whole desire intuitively of going to explore the stories of my grandmothers and their mothers. And
Mhm.
starting to find these patterns of, again, women who had to be the one leading forward, moving forward, the
Yeah.
courageous.
Yeah.
And so is that expectation that there won't be any masculine becomes a it becomes what I'm looking for, unless
Mhm.
it's studied and there's another choice, right? Because it's like our expectation is essentially creating our reality. Like that is, not only the law
Yeah.
of attraction, but the law of coherence. If I'm always in hypervigilance, right? Of like, that no one's gonna actually be there, or that person can be trusted. It's like that is so, so deep for women. I did this deep work exploring and studying from this amazing woman. Her name is Alison Armstrong. She wrote this book called The Queen Code, and it helped me like
Oh,
untangle so
yeah.
much of the language, the subtleties, the unwillingness to let men be men. And it was never by choice. It was completely normalized in my experience, because that's how I saw women being. And
Yeah.
what we see women do is, we're not only learning from what our parents told us or what they said, we're learning from their field. We're learning from what they felt. We are absorbing their emotions. And so
Yeah.
so much of that is like the importance of looking inside, right? And so thinking about how many men did not take the survey of their expectations towards women, and how women have been, like the mothering and the controlling and all the things that so many men that I work with really struggle into being in relationships, because they don't want to repeat what they saw in their family. And so it
Absolutely.
comes to a
Yeah.
point of like the responsibility of studying our own patterns of relationship, because at the end of the day, life is about that. Like that one point, like life is about
Absolutely.
relationships. Like we cannot do this alone, you know? And
Yeah.
so like
No,
the
for sure.
power of having a better relationship with self, and understanding that those feminine and masculine lineages, so that we can create something that is more integral, and that can perhaps play with our energetics depending of what's needed. Because yes, as women in today's world, it's beautiful to be in our masculine. I love that about myself. And there's a completely different experience when there's a man that I want to welcome, and essentially see grow and evolve because of the space that he's landing in, and vice versa, right? Like that there's a capacity for men to just be fully in their masculine, but there's also a necessity, a yearning in so many men to feel, to be artists, to create, to have space to explore their spirituality. And so much of that generationally has been shamed for men as well.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that helped me the most to really comprehend or to understand this sort of concept, because there's so much of that spiritual component to it, and sometimes I just have to be brutally just like honest with myself as well. Is just what helped me here was in for example, you're talking about male and female dynamics. When we think about hyper independence, it isn't just about partnership. It really is like you're not allowing anybody to step in and support you, even friends, you know, and you're always taking that first step when you don't really need to. And
Right.
so for me though, when we're talking about the male female dynamics, you know, what really helped me was I'm not ever giving anybody an opportunity to show up and help me if I'm always the one taking the first step. So
Mhm.
how can I take the step back and
Mhm.
allow someone to actually show me who they are and how they present themselves? And I
Mhm.
think that's really important is especially if it's someone, a woman who's hyper independent and we're talking about these male female dynamics, is you may not even be giving someone an opportunity to show up as they would want to if you don't release, go take a step back and allow yourself to give that person the opportunity even
Mhm.
to help, to guide, to support. So I have so many friends, including myself, that have talked about, you know, I want a man. I want a man who shows up. I want a man who leads. I want a man who takes care of the home, like all of those things. But am I allowing the person to actually take that responsibility? Or am I just stepping into the responsibility because I know how to do it and I'm used to it?
Mhm.
And so that's something that we also have to ask ourselves is what are the patterns that are playing out in my life holding me back from achieving? And how can I actually pull back so that I don't repeat these patterns, but also I can actually almost kind of experience the world and
Mhm.
experience people as they actually are.
Mhm.
That's what's really exciting to me about this work is I don't know that I've actually experienced a lot of people as they actually are because my patterns were just so were being played out on the day to day to day that I was engaging with people in the way that I wanted to experience them, but not necessarily allowing myself to experience them.
Mm. Yeah. Wow, that's deep and powerful. Something that I have been playing with since I did this work with Alison Armstrong is allowing myself to receive, like really
Oh,
receive.
yeah.
Like
That one's hard.
any help that's offered, it's like a compliment. How challenging was it for so many women to receive a compliment cleanly? You know, like, "You look so beautiful." "Oh, you look so beautiful too." You know? "Oh, your hair
Yeah.
is" "No, it's nothing." Yeah, like, how challenging it is for women to really receive. I mean, what has happened over the years is that I feel so incredibly supported, and it was like a complete rewiring. I'm talking about, like, I'm at the airport, people pick up my bags, people let me in the line, like, it's been a complete rewiring because I'm strong. I like to be strong. I'm the kind of person that would lift a person up literally with my hands and that's beautiful to know that I have that and also the power of knowing that samurai because I have it doesn't mean I'm going to use it. And so what happens when I
110%,
soften
yeah.
and let a man, do you want me to carry your bag? Yes. Would you like this? Yes. Thank you. Yes, and thank you became like this whole wiring process because I never saw a woman in my family saying that. The women in my family say, "No, I got it.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
wanna be a bother." "No, I got you. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need?" And so,
Yeah.
like, it has been, like, deep work, but as I'm sharing this, with people and perhaps, like, giving them something to walk away with, what would be something practical that they can start to do in order to take the process of looking at their inherited patterns in a way that doesn't leave them stuck in insight, but perhaps gives them an opportunity to create an action that's more aligned with who's really there behind those patterns.
Well, I can say, like, what I did, and this is kind of the way that I tell people to start or to approach it. I, you know, asked myself, what is it that I really want to experience in this life and in this lifetime?
Mhm.
And the number one thing that came up for me, well, 2 things came up for me, but one was healthy love, like, you know, knowing myself, like really knowing who I am and having someone love me for me, right? Just experiencing that healthy love. And the second was around, you know, financial independence and financial wellness, which is something that is very challenging in my family and in my lineage. But when it came to that experience of healthy love. So I asked myself, okay, what do I want? What do I really want in this lifetime? And then I asked myself, why don't I have it? what am I doing that is really holding me back from being able to achieve this thing that I really want to experience in this lifetime? And really allowing myself to sit with and think about that, and to not do it in a way where I was shaming myself or blaming myself or thinking that I had done anything wrong, but almost kind of being that external observer, like being that person who was just looking at my life and looking at my behaviors and looking at what I was doing and looking at my unhealthy relationships and looking at my relationships that didn't work, and just
Mhm.
simply wanting it with love to get to where I wanted to go. And then I asked myself, okay, so how did I learn this? Where did I learn this? And so that was really powerful because I started
Mhm.
to realize that I wasn't letting men in. I wasn't being vulnerable. I wasn't allowing for myself to really let them see me, let them know me. I was giving all of myself to them, and changing my whole life just so that they would love me. So when I really started to explore these patterns, but then asked myself, like, where did I learn that from? I got to see that I learned these behaviors from the women who came before me. I can remember
Mhm.
literal instances in my life where I saw it happening right there. And that's how I started to realize that I absorbed this. So I think the first thing is really to take a look at your life and ask yourself what you want to experience. And I think that's just such a powerful question in general because it
Mhm.
gives us that concept of, in this lifetime, what is it that I truly want my soul to experience? What do I want to
Ah,
have? What do I want to feel? What do I want to see? That's so powerful in itself. But
ah.
then taking it to that standpoint of, okay, now what's my contribution to not having achieved that yet? And then being able to say, okay, well, where did I learn these things? Where did I learn it? That's really powerful because it's what I want, it's why I'm not there, and it's where did I learn these types of ways of being, these types of ways of thinking and behaving. And you can really identify very clearly the through line. I learned this, so thus I act like this, and therefore I have this and not this. There
Mm.
you go. That's really what it's
Phew.
about, and it's an exercise of self-exploration, and so many people don't wanna they may ask the first question, but they sure as hell don't wanna go to the second one because that's responsibility. You're taking on responsibility for
Mhm.
it, and you're saying,
Yes.
"I, with love and compassion, can understand that there are certain things that I'm doing that are stopping myself." But if then you
Mhm.
take it to the third question, that's when you really get to see it in its full perspective. But I learned this. And if I learned it, I can unlearn it.
Mhm. Gosh, I love that exercise. And yes, that we have the ability to respond, that we're not victims to our impulses. When we create a little bit of space, that place is a choice. And so I really want to invite people, like, consider writing this down because the brain loves data. Actually use
It
different
does.
markers. Like the moment that you give your brain data and it's in front of you and you do it without shaming yourself, because we know we do the best that we can with the information that we have, and so you give yourself more information, like we are forever going to be moving ourselves towards pleasure. That's why evolution happens. Right? So allow
Mhm.
yourself to see the data, to actually write it down fully. Create a graph if you need to. Don't stop just in the beginning. And I really love that you said that, because it is not about shaming yourself. It's about committing yourself to the highest vibration, highest expression that you have. It is an investment. I love that exercise so much, because if you do it and you commit to it, you can start doing what I call micro shifts, right? You start doing a
Yeah.
little micro shift. There's a little bit of each day of a different choice. And all of those things really compound, right? It's like if you know that you have a natural inclination for pushing X away, or disconnecting from here because you don't want to make the difficult choice of speaking up your truth, or whatever it is, those tiny micro shifts, even if in the beginning you're just creating a little bit of space and still making the same choice, that all of that adds up. The brain loves patterns, create a graph, see it for
Yes.
yourself. I love that. I have really enjoyed this conversation with you, Jasmine. I feel like we
Me
can we
too.
can go on forever. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Jasmine Escalera. You can also find the Institute at Heal Your Lineage on Instagram. We're in the process of creating our website, so super excited to
Yay.
announce that very soon. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Jasmine Escalera there. So I would love to address any questions that you have about the Institute. We are really embarking on a wonderful journey of our Lineage Healers archive, so collecting the story of cycle breakers so that we can understand what are the patterns in communities, what are the cycles in communities that we need to break and that communities need to break and individuals need to break. We're also involved in just educating communities around what generational healing is. And so if you're interested in learning more, that's the best place to go.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. If you're a
Yeah,
leader, a founder, a creator, someone who knows there's another chapter calling you, send me the word alive and I'll send you information about the private immersive experiences and mentorship that I offer. My hope is that this conversation gives you not just insight, but that it inspires you to create, to take the next steps. If this stirred something in you, please share it with somebody else that might need this. Subscribe and follow us so that you can get notifications of our next conversation. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful rest of your day.